Welcome to the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses all the things that schools may have missed, with your hosts AJ Kuti and Jason Gordon. Hey everybody, we're back. We are the Reschool'd podcast, the show that discusses the things that schools may not have prepared you for. As always, I'm AJ, sitting across from me, Jason. Jason, how you doing today?
Doing great, AJ. Excited to jump into this episode today.
You been having a good week so far?
Oh yeah, it's fall, and it's my favorite time of year, I believe. You know, the weather's nice, crisp, cool outside. Been getting outside for walks in the evening and all that good stuff. So it's been great.
You say it's the fall, but they're actually probably going to listen to this in the spring.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. This one came out of order. I guess I shouldn't have dated ourselves like that.
It's all right. No, I actually took my kids to the state fair this week.
Nice.
It's about 2.5 hour drive, and I haven't been to this. I used to go regularly. I used to go every year when I was in high school and in college too, but I haven't gone in like 10 years, and apparently inflation has hit the fair hard because, I mean, the games...
$6 elephant ears?
Oh, more than that.
Oh, it's more?
The games were, like, it used to be $1 or maybe $2 if you wanted a couple extra tries or whatever. They're $5 to $10 now.
Jeez.
For one try, $5. And then it cost me $15 to get 2 stuffed animals for my kids to win a little water squirter.
That's assuming you can shoot or throw well enough to win them.
I know. It was, and then like you said, like the elephant ears used to be like $5. It's like $10 now.
Ooh.
Or funnel cakes for like 12.
That's awful, man.
It was bad. I was like, my goodness. Well, I'm glad y'all enjoyed it because we're not coming back.
So there's for your DBA program research. There you go. The inflationary effects on carnival games.
Carny inflation.
Yeah, carny inflation. That's your title.
Well, today's episode, we're going to be talking about I guess you would say the next step of what we talked about last episode, which is the cover letters. We're going to be talking about the resume side this time. And I'm interested in this because this is, again, one of the areas where I felt like I struggled with when I was kind of coming up and trying to find a career. I usually had somebody help me do my resume. And I think a lot of the listeners are kind of in that boat too. They struggle with what's necessary or not. So I feel like this is going to be a pretty good episode. Does that sound good to you?
Absolutely. You know, I teach this all the time during my professionalism career development classes. And so I get more questions on this than just about anything. So this is going to be a good one. Before we jump in though, got to remind everybody, visit our website. That's reschool'd.com. Reschool with the D, not an ED. Check us out on YouTube. We got that going now. Visit us on our social media handles. Also, of course, the podcasting apps. Give us that 5-star review if you like what we're doing. But most of all, we want to answer the questions that you care about. So hit us up on the website or on our social media handles and ask us the questions that you want to hear us talk about, right? You got questions, something you want to know about, we want to address it. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, let's get into the quick question of the day. And since we're dealing with resumes, what's the funniest thing you've ever seen included or said on a resume?
Oh, funniest thing, huh? Let me think.
Or weirdest, I guess.
Yeah, funny or weird. All right, so when I first started teaching at our college, I had a student turn in their resume and cover letter, and I was teaching a communications course. And as part of that course, I had them to do a resume and cover letter. And part of that was introductory, right? They were introducing themselves to me. But I made them put together also this short little spiel where they were given a quick summary of themselves in front of the class, almost like an elevator pitch, but, even more micro than that. It's more personal in nature.
Yeah.
Well, the part that she sought to include and highlight, now this was a beautiful young woman. There's no doubt about it. But her bragging rights were she was the highest earning Hooter waitress in state history. That was her bragging point, and she had it so bolded there, right there in the dead center of the resume, man. She was just as proud as she could be. And, I had to talk to her. I'm like, I know you're proud of it, right? And you're very happy to have that much money, right? But I'm not certain that this is what you want to throw out as part of, you applying for accounting positions if you're looking to be an accountant or financial advisor. Okay. I don't think that's what's going to get you the job. But we're going to talk about things you might want to leave off the resume, right?
Yeah.
So that might be one of them.
That had to have been a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, it was one of those conversations, and me being a guy and everything, it was awkward. I wasn't going to have that conversation like in the office or anything.
No, I'd
like
have had
that.
it in the cafeteria.
That was one of those. I made sure there was other people around at the time and used the example generally. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess my funniest thing I've ever seen included on a resume is what I actually included on a resume. When I was coming out of high school, I was trying to get these jobs, and one of them was, I think I was going for, I can't remember what it was. I think it was going for some kind of accounting job, but the only background I had was I was pretty much I guess you'd say a stock boy almost. Mm-hmm. I did some deliveries. I did very basic sales rep stuff. But I also worked kind of in the front of the house for a copy company, a printing company. And I was trying to figure out how to create this resume and what to include for this job that I was going for. And so I asked a buddy of mine, I said, hey, can you help me with this? And he obviously asked me, okay, what did you do? And so I get my resume back, and it said something along the lines, and this is a long time ago, so I can't remember the exact words, but it was along the same lines as created marketing campaigns to maximize company profit. And it had a couple other big words in there. And I was like, what the heck did I do? And he's like, oh, you stock shelves. I was like, do what? And he said, yeah, you created ways to stock the shelves to maximize the profiting of capabilities of the company. And so that you just stock shelves. It's like, how am I going to pass this if they ask that? So yeah, that was...
Well, I saw a LinkedIn meme the other day along the same lines that basically said, LinkedIn versus real life. And at the top, it said, I got my driver's license. But in the bottom was LinkedIn copy. Uh-huh. And it says, I would like to thank all of those and announce in the most excited manner that I was able to pass a very selective and exclusive test offered to only certain of those who earn the special privilege to undertake operations of heavy machinery in an environment that is otherwise stressful, dangerous, and blah, blah, blah. It just has this long thing. And I'm like, that's about right.
That is true. The amount of embellishment that happens on a resume is unbelievable.
Oh, it's phenomenal. Yeah.
And I think there has to be credit somewhere for the creativity of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what these resume writing centers, they specialize in, right? Making the mundane look spectacular.
Exactly. So you don't want to just go, I stock shelves. You have to make it sound good.
Right. Now, I can say, to a certain extent, there are ways to do it.
And there's ways not to do it.
And there are ways not to do it. My LinkedIn example is a way not to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, because if they ask that question in the interview, like, what did you do? And then you actually have to say, oh, I stock shelves or I got my driver's license. They're going to look at you like you're a complete idiot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so. Or just be taken back by it.
Or just clear creativity.
Yeah. So, all right, so you want to jump into this?
Yeah, let's get into the main topics. So let's start with the same place we started with the cover letter last episode, and that is, what is the true purpose of a resume? Okay. So explain that to us.
Well, in my mind, so last episode, and if y'all haven't watched it, we talked about the purpose of the cover letter and how it's a supplement to the resume, right? Your resume being the starting point. All of it together, collectively, is an attempt to get an interview, because nobody gets hired just off of their resume, right? You garner interest in you as a candidate for employment by your resume and cover letter. So you're trying to get that interview. That's your primary objective, all right? So with that being said, what is the resume? It is a snapshot in history. And the cover letter, like we talked about last time, is a way you explain about yourself. You grab their attention and you sell your value to them, right? You convince them, you persuade them about your value. But again, one of the aspects of networking, one of the aspects of interviews, one of the aspects of applying for a job is to make certain the employer, whoever's reviewing your resume and cover letter and stuff like that, understands certain things about you. Those things being what you want, why you want it, and what you've done to get it. Well, just plain and simple, the resume is that third one, what you've done to get it. It is your past. It is your history. It is a snapshot of where you've been. Okay. And it shows them the qualifications and et cetera and experience you have that will make you potentially a good fit for the position, right? Demonstrates that minimum level of competence for the position. So there you go.
Would you equate this really to like a newspaper ad for a product? I mean, you're really just marketing yourself, but it's just a more detailed version and a more professional version?
Very similar. I mean, most of this is
Without the pictures,
like
obviously.
Most of the marketing stuff is a persuasive message. It's trying to convince you to buy.
Yep.
In the same way for the employer, it's a persuasive message trying to convince them to hire you on. And so that being said, you can look at it with that same analogy. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the marketing side, I mean, you are marketing yourself. You are, put it in probably the worst terms possible, you are trying to sell yourself.
Mm-hmm. And, the resume being a snapshot in history, you're hoping that they deduce from that that you have minimum competency for the position and that you'll add value and that you'll be a good fit and all that kind of stuff. But, hoping that they deduce it, that's not a good ploy. That's why you go back to the cover letter and say, look, I need to paint that picture for them. I need them to see me in the position, to understand how this fits and creates value for them. So again, I'm just plugging that over and over. Go back to that cover letter episode. It's going to be useful to you.
Well, next question, and this one's an interesting one because I've assumed wrong when I first came out looking into resumes, and then I kind of found that there's other ones, but there's not very useful for me in my position. But are there different types of resumes, and if so, what are they?
There are, and I'm not, as far as the academic name for them or the professional name for them, right? There's resumes that you use for specific purpose, right? I think they call them functional resumes, right?
Yep.
And that's specifically tailored to, oftentimes it's not even for a new job, right? It's for qualifications or certifications or getting into school or something like that, right? Or for a certification, right? You're applying to be a CPA and you have to turn in, history elements and stuff like that. So, but by its very nature, a resume means a summary. Okay. So, anything that you need a summary of your life's experience, which is your curriculum vitae, your CV, right? So whatever the function is going to dictate what you're using. In this scenario, we're focusing heavily on career, right? So we're gonna focus here in this episode on using the resume to get the interview for a job. Okay.
Yeah, when I talk to students and they ask me about their resume, if they don't, the only time I don't say use a chronological resume, which is the traditional resume that we think of where you have your work history and everything, the only time I say you may want to look at a functional resume is when you don't have any work experience. You don't have anything to put in that work experience section. This is really the first job that you're going for. Outside of that, from a business perspective, chronological is the obvious way to go.
Yeah. Most places are going to want to account for your history. Now, the more experience you get and the more non-traditional students in school, I will say all of a sudden you're in a different scenario. Or if you're in some specific career where experience is so much more valuable than, being in school or getting the degree or things like that. And that's normally in things like sales or in technology, right? It's more about ability, right, in the sales field or technical skills in the technology industry than it is about the degree. So all of a sudden you start moving things around. You start putting to the front your experience in a given area rather than just what you did last in the last jobs. And oftentimes that last job, right, stopped short of or prior to school. Then all of a sudden you might get into internships and things like that during your academic program.
Are there any specific items that you should definitely include on your resume? And we'll go, actually, this is a two-part question because we can say, are there any things we should leave off? So let's just start with the first ones. Are there any things we should definitely include on our resume?
Yes. And I look at those differently, right? The things you should include, those are the bare minimums. The things you should leave off oftentimes are embarrassing stuff or useless stuff or actually detract, right? So that being said, the things you could or should generally include A little bit of this is going to be industry specific, right? So if you are in tech, you're going to have to include some specific tech skill stuff. Okay, that's going to be highly important. But traditionally, education is a big one. It's one of those signaling functions for an employer. So if you've got education background, you've got an associate's degree, you got a technical degree, you've got a 4-year college degree, you got a master's degree, whatever, right? Start there. Now, where you put it on the resume may change a little bit based upon your purpose of the resume, but that needs to be on there, your educational background. 2, certifications that you may have that are relevant, particularly in industries where the certification entitles you to something, right? If you're in accounting, right, what's the big certification?
CPA.
CPA is the monster, right? It's the big one in the room that everybody knows about. But there are others.
I hate when you put me on the spot because I'm always afraid I'm going to get it wrong.
Yeah. Right.
Well, oh, God, what is it? What is it?
Right. But, there are other certifications in the accounting, sort of financial accounting. There's managerial accounting certifications.
CMA,
global,
CFE, all that,
global accountant. And so all of these things, all of these certifications that entitle you or show some level of expertise are very important. And these happen across industry, right? I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're a teacher, right? You can be national board certified. You're a nurse. You can have specific board certifications for different specialties and skills. If you're in, it doesn't matter the field, right? You're going to have certain types of skill sets that you might be able to get certifications and things like that and put those in, right? So there you go. Those kind of group there together with education. Oftentimes they're always going to go in there. Next, start looking for specific skills that are relevant to your industry career path that you need to bring up. Now, we're going to talk about this, but there's a lot of garbage stuff that's put in there, like leadership ability, real go-getter, that type of stuff. Work well with others. There's an assumption about that, right? And most of that's puffery, as they call it. Most of that stuff needs to be left out. You focus on the things that are skill-focused. Right.
Do you think there's ever been do you ever think there's a resume that said terrible with other people, like works awful with other people?
Not a successful resume that said that.
I was just wondering if somebody was being real honest and was like, I don't really like working with other people, but I'm good on my own.
Well, in the interview, when they ask you your weaknesses, if you are a remote tech worker, right, they just assume you're bad with people. Right. I mean, there's an assumption that goes along with that, right? You're applying to a school of actuarial sciences, right? Yeah. There's a saying about actuaries, and if you don't know what actuaries do, they use statistics to estimate the probability of something happen. But actuaries are people who didn't have enough personality to be accountants.
Which is odd because to me, like, tax is like, that's why when I was going through school, I couldn't go through taxation because I just could not see myself sitting behind a desk and working on people's taxes all the time. Like, I had to be an auditor, which is going to give me the ability to, which in the end I ended up teaching, but give me the ability to interact with people. So yeah, those skills, I think you're right. They are assumed by many, and putting them is just, I would venture to say the person that's hiring and just reading your resume is probably going to overlook them every single time. Yeah. You could use that space for something else that's more important.
Yeah, just puffery. Just leave that stuff out, right? So there you go. So far we've identified education, certification, and skills. But next, everybody expects to see your work history.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, not necessarily that your work history is going to be that amazing, but it does show some level of exposure to. Well, even if you haven't worked in your industry yet, like lots of students getting out of college, they haven't worked in their industry, okay? They've got some jobs, oftentimes retail, like, waiting tables, bartending, working retail establishments in sales, that type of thing. But still, that is the work environment. You know what the work environment's like. You know what meeting time pressures of whatever that job told, that type of thing. So everybody expects to see some level of work history. Now, some people don't have any work history, right? And that's where you might want to modify that section a bit. You've never had a job before, but you have done things, right? You have participated in clubs. You might have social or whatever special interest groups that
Extracurriculars.
What's that now?
Extracurriculars.
Yeah, extracurriculars, things like that. Like if you took a leadership position or active participant in a club, right? And y'all took part in projects and things like that. That stuff, while it's not the exact same as having a job, it does mean something, right? It does have some air of responsibility, you meeting the expectations, obligations of others, working with others, skill development, that type of thing. Okay. So that being said, now I'm a big proponent of you never want to graduate, at least college or some form of college, without having something in your experience section there in terms of work. And I'm a huge proponent of internships.
Yep.
Internships are treated just like work, right? Sometimes they're even better than work because there's an assumption there that you were exposed to things that were outside of your current pay grade, right? Meaning that you were exposed to things that at a higher level than you otherwise would have been if you just had a part-time job or that type of thing. So anyway, using your educational time to also build up that experiential component.
Leading into the next question, which is, are there any things that you should leave off? I have a question for you because you were just talking about extracurricular activities. So if you're in college and you're leaving college, you put the extracurricular activities to show that you either had leadership or you sometimes, depending on how much extracurriculars you had, it could also show very good time management skills because you balanced school and other things. Mm-hmm. Is there a statute of limitations on these extracurriculars? Like, I'm probably not going to put what I did in college on a resume now because it would not really hold any water.
In most scenarios, yes, there is a statute of limitation or a statute of repose on it, right? Where you put that.
I didn't know what the technical term was. You're the legal guy.
Yeah. So yes, there he is. Okay. But things that are extremely important, you can keep those on your resume forever because it shows more developmentally what type of person you are. Like if you were a valedictorian or salutatorian of your high school, I don't care. You always put that on there. That is a huge honor, and it kind of shows where you started in life, and there's a ton of, respect that goes along with it, so definitely, right? Other things, like I was just involved in the marketing club, maybe not, right? But if you graduated, president's list, dean's list, whatever the academic
cum laude,
fraternity.
Summa cum laude.
Yeah, the cum laude
Thank
stuff.
you, Laud.
Or if you're inducted into Honor Society, like Phi Beta Kappa, right, is a well-known one type thing. That's the kind of stuff that's timeless. Yeah. If you put your education on there, you put that Phi Beta Kappa on there as well. Again, it's one of those things just like valedictorian, salutatorian, something like that. It says something about you. But yeah, involvement in a club or something like that, no, that can be dated.
I'm interested in your take on this because I've always said this. I've always told the students that I've mentored when it comes to resumes, if they ask me questions or whatnot, I'm a firm believer of you don't put your GPA on your resume unless you make a 4.0. And my rationale behind that is because even if you made a 3.9, you're talking about a position that's probably going to get maybe 50 to 100 resumes, potentially depending on what, the demand of the position. And inevitably, somebody's going to put a grade higher than yours. And so you're already starting on a negative foot to say you're not quite as good as this person over here. Whereas if you have a 3.9 and you don't put it on there, it doesn't completely count you out or discount you right away. It's something that you could bring up in the interview. And so what say you on that? Like, what's your opinion?
So my opinion is if you have a good GPA, include it, particularly if it's in certain areas. Like everyone knows that if you study engineering or sciences, a 3.4 is better than a 4.0 in
underwater basket weaving,
right? That traditional fluff degree, as they say, one that's not terribly difficult in nature. So there's that, right? So I would say that GPA alone, that you're not comparing apples to apples always, right? Yeah. You're measuring two different things just on the same scale. But that being said, people hire people. Yeah. Okay. It's not, you don't get hired just based upon what's on your resume. That resume is a ticket to get you the interview. And putting down there that you have a great great GPA on your resume can signal that, look, you're a serious student. Okay. This wasn't something you just kind of stumbled your way through. And that can impress people. That can still, you hear about all the time, top colleges exclude people with 4.0s, right?
Yeah.
Or really high scores on standardized testing or something like that. And you hear about employers all the time that exclude people who have perfect GPAs in college and things like that. And it comes back to that thing that people hire people. So what you're doing is mainly making certain that what you're putting down there is going to be received well. Okay. Lots of times the people who are reviewing your resume did not get a 4.0. And they know the people who got the 4.0 might be a little bit, they might be highly focused on school, but maybe not social.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to work beside this person, right? You might want to see somebody who likes to also take part in
who works well with others.
Yeah. Like, who wants to take part in community things. Right. Yeah. So that being said, it's going to depend. And there are some jobs that are going to want to see it.
Yeah.
Like if you apply to consulting, particularly strategy consulting, the essence of consulting is they're selling your intelligence, right? They're saying you're a super smart person that we're going to put there and do this work. So they want all the accolades they can get. If you had a high SAT score, they're going to brag about it. They want to see it on your resume, and they're going to provide your resume as a team member to the employer that you're servicing, right? High GPA, you went to an elite college, things like that. They're going to brag about those things. So that being said, in that case, GPA could be highly necessary, right?
One quick question, you can answer this, real quickly. You said if you have a good or great GPA, is there a threshold in your mind of what a great, because great is or good is relative. And so is there a threshold in your mind where you would say, okay, if you made lower than this, then I probably wouldn't put it on there?
If you made less than a 3.0, never put it on there.
Oh, sweet. I have a chance. I never put mine on there.
There's something just about that too at the beginning of the whatever. I don't care if it's 2.99.
Yeah.
If you made less than a 3.0, don't include it on there. Some people will even say 3.2. Yeah. Now, I will say this, a 3.0 in engineering is better than, that is going to look stronger than a 3.5 in some of your less demanding fields. Like, I'm not going to lie. If I see somebody who made a 3.2 in engineering or biology, I know 100% that they are a more capable student than a 3.8 in business.
Yeah.
I mean, business is just nowhere near as challenging throughout the curriculum.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know this is not our tips and tricks series, but I do feel like there is a bunch of listeners out there, both of them, that are probably asking, do we have any tips when it comes to creating their resume? So I'm going to ask you, do you have any tips? I've got a couple in my head about creating resumes for our listeners.
I do. So we talked about a little bit earlier that there are going to be industry-specific ones, okay? Start getting an idea of what is expected in your industry. Like business, it's got kind of a standard format, and if you go outside of that, it actually hurts you. Creativity fields like design, right? Something art related. Well, that's, they're going to look for more of a creative type of resume. And so you're going to see things that scatter the spectrum. Now, you're still going to put those same elements that we talked about, including stuff like projects that you've worked on, and your portfolio is going to be huge in those fields, right? Your proof of work type thing, where it's not quite as big in other fields. And we talk a good bit about portfolio and stuff like that in our electronic resume stuff, our LinkedIn episodes, right? That type of thing. So anyway, I'm going to start with that. Know your industry so you know what format of resume you're going to throw out there. That's tip number one.
I'm going to piggyback. I would say this would be tip number 1B, because mine's very similar to that. And that is, you never want to have the same resume for every job that you apply for, because you need to have it specific and customized to that position. So you need to go do your homework, find out what they're looking for, find out what your roles and responsibilities are going to be, so you can adapt your resume to show, hey, I have experience in this, and I'm a good candidate for what you are looking for in this position. You don't want a blanket resume that you just send out to everywhere and they're all the same, because you're not going to show any customization. You're not going to show any dedication. You're really not going to show any time that you put into it. So I always tell students, you need to have a template, which is the bare basics of it, but the objective side, the objective section, is going to be completely different between jobs that you apply for, assuming, unless you apply obviously for the exact same position that has the exact same roles, which are very few and far between.
Agreed.
And so I would say customize them.
Yep, that is a great point. One other thing I would say that's really important is, almost all resumes are going to, underneath your experience, you're going to have bullets or bullet points underneath where you explain what you did in that job. Well, that's the standard thinking of, I had this job, this is what I did. Well, a lot of that stuff is self-explanatory. My recommendation is dig deeper than that. Don't just say what you did in the job. Ask yourself, what did I do? Ask yourself, what role did what I do play in the overall business organization? Like, how did it create value? That will add to, because then you'll talk more about what the overall, business processes or whatever the overall mission of what you were doing is. It will paint that picture and how you fall into that. Especially if you're going for management or leadership roles, you having a holistic understanding of how the business works is going to be heavily important. Okay, so dig a little deeper and ask that, what did I do? How did that fit into the overall mission? And then number 3, and this is a trick that applies regardless of the industry. Try to quantify it.
You took mine away.
Oh, did I?
That was my last tip.
Oh, okay.
Because it's such an important one.
Yeah. We're gonna, we're both hammering down on that one. If you add the numbers to it, meaning that I helped increase this, or I managed this many people, or I had responsibility for this value of project, or I
decreased this rate by X.
Yeah, the numbers, the dollar signs, the percentage change, that type of thing, it's going to be huge for you. Okay, it's what's going to set you apart from the other person who just lists the position and tells you what they did. You now can demonstrate this deeper, holistic understanding, and you quantify it. And people don't realize this, but people's eyes on a piece of paper, there's so many letters on there, so many words strung together. People's eyes track towards things like, well, one, obviously, diagrams and stuff like that. But on a resume, you're not going to have any or much of that. But numbers, right? Mm-hmm. The symbols that obviously stand out, like value signs and stuff like that. That's people's eyes are going to track to it, and it's going to make them pay greater attention to that. And like I say, those bullets are there to build you up and show them how you fit. Well, there you go. Okay.
I would say the importance of what you just said also shows the importance of the moment you get the job that you start keeping up with these quantitative data. That way, when you do use or when you do have to create another resume for another job that you're seeking, you have this information at your disposal. So it is an ongoing process. So if you managed one thing this year, then you would create a bullet point that says manage this one, whatever it was this year. And then the next year you would just change 1 to 2. That way you'll have it completely ongoing, and you don't have to go back and kind of rush to find this information when you are trying to apply for another job.
That's a great point. Great point. Which brings up another tip real quick. Your resume is going to get long, right? It's going to start adding in more and more information. A resume by its very nature is 1 page.
Yes.
They call it a resume, a summary, for a reason, right? And the idea is this. If a lot of people are applying to a position and whoever's going to review it has a finite or limited amount of time to review those resumes, well, particularly if there's a cover letter in there as well, right? You need to make it so that person can pick up the cover letter in one hand and read everything that's there, and pick up the resume in the other and look at it and identify all the information on it right there, okay, without having to flip pages over. Because oftentimes they won't flip the page. They won't turn it over unless you've captivated them to start with. So everything needs to be well organized in that way, in that one page format. So again, all the information that's going to make them say, yes, we need to interview this person, see if they're a good candidate. Okay. So there you go. One
My
page.
last tip would be there, and this is more of the strategy side. This is kind of going back to what I felt more comfortable with, is there is a level in which you give too much information. There is a level where you don't give enough information. And then there's this sweet spot right in the middle where you give enough to get them interested, pull them in, and then, but not enough that you give all the information, and they'll ask those stuffs during the interview. And so it allows you to kind of go ahead and preemptively know or have an idea of what they're going to ask you in the interview, so you can be prepared for that as well. Like, I'm all about putting enough information to get to spark their interest, but also leaving it would be almost like I wouldn't say red flag because it has a negative connotation, but almost giving them a clue. Hey, ask this question from me in the interview. You won't be sorry. And I loved doing that because, again, it gave me a way to prepare for the interview as well. You don't ever want to put, going back to what I was saying at the very beginning with the funniest thing I've ever seen, or what I used, you don't want to embellish too much. I mean, that's obvious. But you want to be able to, all those bullet points that you were just talking about, Jason, that you have under your work experience, you need to be able to explain those things very, very well. If someone were to ask you something and you go, well, I don't know, I just found that somewhere, then they can pretty much nullify that point right away.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need that. That's a tick mark that you just don't need on your application. So I would say be strategic with it, but make sure you have enough understanding of everything that you put under there that you can explain it in detail.
That's great final point there. And it did remind me to say one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Use your resources.
Yes.
Particularly college is an incredible resource place for career development. Use your career development center. Almost every college has one, okay? And they do things like review your resume, help you develop a cover letter. I can remember back when I was in business school, I took my resume to the career development folks, and they were a great career development team. They sent my resume back with more red marks on it than black marks, than
Looks
black
like
writing.
my tests
right?
when I had a test.
Yeah, I mean, and just so many things to correct, and then I would correct them all and take it back. I must have taken the same resume, versions of the same resume, to them multiple times, at least 5. And every time it came back with subtle things that could be added to it, that could be changed, that could be looked at a little bit different. And so that being said, it is a process. Resumes continue to evolve. They can always be better, but use your resources, use the viewpoints of others to make that better. Now, you don't have to incorporate everything that somebody else says, but have other professionals who know what they're doing. Like I say, there's going to be hardly anybody better than people who do it all day long for a living in career centers. Have them look at your resume and help you make it better, right? They're there for you.
Yes, and don't take it personally, and don't be too proud to change. Because remember, this document is not for you, it's for someone else. And the more eyes you can get on it, the better you can understand what other people would be looking at. If you're too proud going into that, going, I have the perfect resume, you're going to use it as a stumbling block more than anything else.
Yeah, agreed. I've seen that happen too, right? People's pride were hurt when the resume came back and it was so marked up. But they're trying to help you. They're just there to improve your career opportunities.
Well, on a future episode, one that's actually coming up here probably pretty soon, we're going to be discussing the importance of digital resumes and websites. Using websites as kind of your portfolio almost. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna kind of push that question on until the next episode because we're coming up on the end of time right now. But please stay tuned because we're going to be talking about things like LinkedIn and those kind of things because those are huge. I know Jason is very big on that, and he, even when we were talking about that, you were even talking about maybe splitting it up into pieces because it is that important.
Yeah, LinkedIn is, an amazing tool. I teach a course that has a 2-part series on it. Right? It is in many ways the standalone tool above all else, right?
And
So,
listeners, if you stay with us, you get that for free.
for free. That's
You don't
right.
even have to pay for the class.
I mean, people pay money for this.
Well, Jason, that was an awesome episode, and I can't wait. Like this series that we've got going on with cover letter, resume, and then interview, and then also LinkedIn and those kind of things. I'm looking so forward to that because these are things that I felt like I was really deficient in. At least some of these I was very deficient in when I was going through college. So I think these are really going to help the listeners as they prepare to transition from college to career or just career while they're in college. So I'm super stoked about what's to come. Do you have anything else to say before we leave?
Just remind everybody, visit our websites, visit the website, visit our social media handles, drop us those lines so we understand what you want to hear about. You want us to celebrate something with you? We'll celebrate it, right? Tell us some good things that happened to you too. But anyway, that being said, we just look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Well, until next time, guys, we hope to see you then. Goodbye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Reschool'd podcast. Be sure to head over to reschool'd.com for news and other information on things we're getting into.